Hello and welcome to another episode of the Carp Angler Chronicles podcast. Bit of a special one for you today. We've been very kindly asked by Dom from the Spodcast to come onto his show and talk about our past angling experiences as well as what we plan to do once this lockdown period is over. So without further ado, we will pop into Dom's podcast.
Podcast. Today we've got the Carp Angler Chronicles. So we've got Sam and Pete. Welcome aboard, guys.
Cheers,
Hello,
Dom.
Thank you very much for having us.
Where should we start?
Dom, is this your first threesome on your podcast?
It certainly is.
It is.
Yeah.
Honoured.
Yeah.
We're honoured.
Don't tell the missus.
No, we won't. We'll keep it between us.
Right, I'll tell you what, Sam, if you give us an intro into you first, who you are, and a bit about the podcast, and then we can ask the same to Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. So, appreciate a lot of Dom's listeners probably don't know who we are. We recently started up a podcast called Carp Angler Chronicles. Not taking it too seriously. It's basically me and Pete having some carpy chats. And we started that around about November last year, which is 2019. And that's where we're at now. And that's how we got to talk to Dom. In terms of myself, I've been, as many of us have, angler since I was very little. Catching the little ones, and then finally kind of worked my way up to carp, which I appreciate most of the listeners are going to be carp anglers. When I was 18, I believe, which was 18 years ago, actually, down in Cornwall. So I wasn't blessed with the best carp angling going, but nonetheless, absolutely mad keen. And Cornwall, it's got its own kind of uniqueness to it. There's obviously there's no circuit waters, so to speak, down there. There's not that many big carp whatsoever. Kind of like a 30 in Cornwall is the same as a upper 40 or probably more than that in the rest of the country, or certainly in the middle of the country. So big fish angling wasn't rife in Cornwall, but what Cornwall does offer is some kind of big untapped waters, which is where, after quite a few years of carp angling, that's kind of where I saw myself gravitating towards, with Pete as well, who's the other half of our podcast. Did a lot of our angling together. I got Pete into fishing. He was into other coarse fishing before. And I moved up to the Cotswolds 6 years ago. And obviously now I'm sort of basking in the luxury of being in an area where there's actually quite a few big fish and there's a lot of very nice water to go at. That kind of brings me up to present day.
Cool. Pete, same to you, mate.
Yeah, so Sam sort of covered all the podcast side of things. So we started it up mainly as a way to get. We've not been doing it, both of us, for different reasons, haven't been doing a lot of fishing. So I guess it was a way for us to get a bit of a fishing fix. We could talk about it and just put it out there for the general public. My fishing background is growing up in Cornwall. Did a lot of sort of sea fishing, a lot of bass fishing, spinning for bass, and fly fishing as well. So my dad's a keen fly angler. And then it wasn't until sort of my late teens, I met Sam. We used to work together at a holiday park, and they had some carp in the lakes there, and Sam got me the carp bug from there, really. And I've been a carp fisherman ever since.
Brilliant. So in terms of waters for you then, Pete, are you on the big resis down there still, or?
No, not so much. So I've had three children in the last 5-6 years, so my fishing's been sort of limited. So where I've been getting out, I've been fishing a few sort of day tickets, and this year I've rejoined an angling club I was a member of. So they've got a couple of cracking waters, so that's sort of got my interest at the moment.
Right, okay. So in terms of obviously where we are at the moment, we're in the middle of this lockdown. What do both of you do in terms of a day job or a business? So Sam, if you answer first, just to sort of give the listeners an idea.
Just make dreams come true, basically. Um, no, I'm joking. Yeah, so I own a gym. It's more of a fitness studio, really, because it's more of a, rather than just like people walking in and doing their own thing. It's more of a structured environment where our clients go through, structured programs. So I own that. Obviously, that's not open at the minute, or Corona lockdown, etc. In addition to that, I've also got a remote consultancy based business where basically I consult with my clients on slightly more in-depth health issues. We do a lot of DNA work and lots of different self-quantification just to basically help people be a lot fitter, healthier on more of a biological level. So that business hasn't been affected by the whole COVID-19 Corona thing, which is great. Obviously, my studio has. But nonetheless, to be honest with you, I think what will actually be the biggest impact for us business owners, Dom, I know you're in a business as well. I think it's less so much this loss of some business up front. I think it's more the economic impact long term. I know you're in the heating game, Dom. So I mean, if you need a new boiler or whatever it is, you need a new one. So I imagine you're somewhat recession proof. But I think for a lot of people and a lot of businesses that it's actually the economic downturn that'll be the real kind of sledgehammer to them. So yeah, I'm just protecting about that, reading ahead and making the best choices I can, basically.
Yeah, I suppose obviously with it being remote, I'd imagine. Have you seen sort of an upturn on that side, or is it a case of people being careful and only spending on essentials?
Yeah, it is. It's. It would take me a while to get into it. So my market, my niche tends to be. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I have clients from all walks of life, but a lot of it is more kind of entrepreneurial people that just want to be a little bit more optimized, we would say, because obviously, if you're on top of your health, you're feeling on top of the world every day. Your work performance is going to reflect that. You're going to be in a growth mindset. So yes and no. Some people I've spoken. I mean, I've still been bringing on clients. Some of them, of course, are concerned about the coronavirus and the monetary side of things. Other people are seeing this as an opportunity. I mean, if you look at Apple's growth, like when they really took off was during late 2007, 2008, 2009. That is when the last major recession was prevalent. And the same as Hermes, the luxury brand. There's been quite a few brands that actually excel in times of financial desperation. So it's
Definitely.
yeah, it's like, where do you want your focus to go? And I guess, I mean, we're going off on massive tangents here, but I would urge everyone listening to this podcast, like you maybe you're employed right now, maybe you're self-employed, but whatever it is, if you're focusing on the lack and how hard it is, you're generally just going to get more of that, right? Look at the opportunity, think about what you can do. If this has screwed your finances up a little bit, okay, maybe that's an indicator that your finances aren't super watertight, so maybe you should be looking at that. What I'm trying to say is use it as an opportunity, get some benefit out of it, if nothing more than just to kind of shake yourself up and push yourself to achieve better things. That would be my advice.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer, mate. Pete, what about you? What do you do?
So I'm the manager and a director of Leisure Centre. So it's a leisure centre in North Cornwall, out in the sticks, up on the moors in the middle of nowhere, basically. And we were the first sort of council-run facility that got closed. This is 7 or 8 years ago, nearly now, with all the austerity cuts with government. So we're completely sort of non-profit business. Literally, what sort of money we get over the till and memberships pay the staff and keep the place going. So we've got a really small team of staff. We've got a lot of volunteers who we rely on from the local community to keep the place open and running. And that's it. COVID-wise, I'm actually just gone on furlough at the moment. So I'm not supposed to be working for the business, but I am doing so on a voluntary basis. We've got a swimming pool and things, so I'm going in, we're keeping the plant room sort of ticking over and stuff. So I'm popping in sort of just once a week. I've got another colleague doing the same, and I'm just doing a number of sort of membership queries, keeping social media alive, that sort of thing. Just keeping us ticking over until we sort of get out of it and go from there. But that's me.
Cool. Okay. Right. So I wanted to get all the COVID stuff out of the way, so that's done. Let's move on to angling, because that's what everyone wants to talk about. Where are you guys both fishing in the minute? So if I just do it, asking Sam then Pete, just to keep the sort of, a bit of a format there. So Sam, where are you angling at all at the minute? Well, obviously pre-lockdown, were you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna annoy our guests right now. I can't name the places, or more to the point, I don't want to name the places. But yes, so I've got up until lockdown, I've been baiting up a private water. It's around about 20 acres, and there's 22 carp in it. It's a real nice carp in there. Planned to do a little bit in there. That there's one or two that I would quite like to have out. Had quite a good result on there last year. There's a couple left. I'm kind of passively angling that place, I guess you'd say. But my real water for this year is going to be a big pit here in the Cotswolds. And I've yet to start. I've been there a little bit. I've been plotting out some swims, doing some marker work, but I haven't actually got my teeth into it. I literally got my ticket, I think it was 2 weeks before lockdown happened. So yeah, same for you, is it? Where were you going?
Yeah, exactly the same, mate. A big Cotswold pit.
I think we spoke about it before. Yeah.
So I think one session in, and then it closed. Yeah. Okay, what about you, Pete?
So I'm fishing a local club. So the water I'm focusing on, I guess, like you guys, is a no publicity sort of ruling. I think the exact term, if you want to publicise a catch, has to be from a southwest still water. But frustratingly, like you guys, I just sort of got my teeth into it. I've been going down probably 3 or 4 times a week, baiting up a few spots. I don't know a great deal about the lake. I know I was a member of the club before, and you were, Sam. Like the topography, so the bottom of the lake is up and down. If you turned an egg box upside down, it's that old cliche. It's definitely that. So I found a few spots. I've baited it up. I've done 2 sort of overnighters, and I've managed on my first night to fluke one out. And now we've been sort of thrown into lockdown. So it's a tough one to take, isn't it? I mean, for carp anglers to not be able to go out on the bank at this time of year, we've got the sun out, spring is in sort of full flow. I was saying to Sam about the blossom on blackthorn on my walks recently. Yes, it's a tough one, isn't it? I think we're all struggling.
It's you sort of gear up for it, don't you? That all spring's on its way, rubbing your hands together. I mean, I did a bit in the winter. It was on Christchurch, so when you couldn't use zigs, obviously then when they let you use zigs for a short period, and I had one. But it was that vibe. The birds are singing, the days start to draw out a little bit, and you think, here we go, not long now. Yeah, and then wallop, have some of that.
That's it. That's the killer, isn't it? Because the clocks have changed now. So we've got the light evenings. And for me, so a lot of my fishing to chime in with sort of family life, and I think a lot of guys listening to this will probably resonate with it as well. I pick a night of the week, and I finish work, and I boot it down to the lake, do my overnighter, pack up in the morning. I then take the kids to school and straight back to work again. So my time on the bank's limited. So now the evenings are drawn out and light. It's gutting.
Yeah, because it's so nice being able to get your rods out in the light, isn't it? Not having to do it in the dark.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can be organised and sort of have them clipped up when you leave for the next time you arrive and things, but you can certainly make your life easier if you're sort of setting up in the dark. But there's nothing like a spring or summer's evening.
Do you find as well, Pete, that makes you a bit of a better angler when you've got only that limited time to get out and fish? Do you find you're sort of a bit more on it?
I think so, yeah. Especially at the moment, because I've been able to dedicate a bit of time to walking around the lake, as I was saying, and I've been sort of baiting some spots. I think so. And a big thing for me as well is trying to travel light. And I think because I do such short sessions, I'm always inclined to sort of travel light. And I think that sort of it declutters your brain as well as your tackle box, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's something that I always do because things tend to creep back in, don't they, into your bag, an extra tub of pop-ups or a few extra leads, and then a few sessions like that, and then you're back to where you started.
It's amazing. It's literally amazing what you can gather.
Yeah, no, it's just being on it. I think when I was doing the work overnighters, I would get the rods out and then, almost pack down as much as you can before you go to sleep. So it just takes the edge off, doesn't it?
That's it, yeah. I'll tell you what I find the most frustrating thing about fishing in this fashion, and it's not a biggie at all, but it's just really, especially in the winter, is you can just never dry your bivvy out. And it absolutely does my head in, because then I spend the rest of the week sort of putting it up in the outside as soon as there's any dry weather, or up in the garage I've been doing, up in the loft, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got mice in my garage, so most of my kit stays in the van wherever possible, because you know what damage they do.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want? I think you got a few questions in your topics on Instagram. Do you want to go over those?
So Sam had the Instagram ones. There was something which I saw on one of the Facebook groups. I can't remember which one. It might have been Totally Carp or something like that. And it was regarding about fish behaviour and sort of the lakes being pressured. And now all of a sudden we've got a number of weeks. I mean, we don't know how long this period's going to go on for. And it was just a discussion about sort of fish behaviour on pressured waters, and how much their behaviour is like to change if we've got, say, 8 weeks of no fishing, and how their behaviour is like to change, and will it make them easier to catch?
Yeah, that's a really good one, because using Christchurch as an example, the regulars always said that it fished a lot better when there were several people on. If it was quiet or just one or two of you, it was a lot harder. But when there was, say, sort of 8+ people on, it would tend to fish better because it just kept the fish moving around. And they tend to sort of, I've said it before in a previous episode, that they just don't seem to follow the rules in there. I think because they're so old and it's not a particularly big lake, they just behave. They sort of react to the pressure as opposed to the weather conditions.
How are people fishing for them there? Are they putting in a lot of bait? Is it zigs? What are the sort of...
When zigs were allowed, obviously they allowed zigs for a short time and then banned them again, but they would get clobbered on zigs, zigs and maggots. They would, yeah. So when they got banned, obviously in the colder weather, it was a struggle. In the warmer weather, I think the regulars would never really fish over massive amounts of bait. It would be, just a handful or little traps in the edge. Certain swims seem to sort of do the better fish, but they love a floater on there as well. All the big fish tend to come out on a floater at the right time of year.
Yeah, because my sort of take on this with the pressured fish is it's going to sort of come down to bait. I think a lot of these lakes, the fish aren't going to be fed, and they're not going to get that angler's bait, especially sort of high stock lakes. So you're sort of like your go-to day ticket type waters. So my thoughts are, like, in a general sense, I think the fishing's going to be pretty prolific when we're all allowed back on the lakes. I think the fish are going to get a load of bait going, and I think they're gonna be on their munch. They're gonna get their heads down.
Yeah, no, definitely. I actually was a previous guest of the podcast, and Ben Pinniger. He runs BP Milling, so he does a lot of fish feeds, and he's still open because he basically does it on his parents' farm. So it's just him in the factory, and he's still got loads of orders going out where fishery owners are sort of subsidising anglers' bait, if you like, with his feed. But yeah, I think you're right, Pete. What do you think on that, Sam, in terms of fish behaviour?
Yeah, I think it depends on the venue. To be honest with you, I think you're absolutely right. Some venues are definitely going to go like that. I think on the type of venue where there's less natural food, maybe the more commercial side of things, and where the fish are maybe more reliant upon anglers' bait. Obviously, they're going to fish very well because the fish are waking up now. I hate that phrase, but it makes sense to everyone, so I use it. They're going to be very hungry for the angler's food, right? That high protein and fat source. I think there's other venues that maybe getting the fish on not only your bait but the angler's bait, boilies, particles. I think some of those waters are actually reliant upon this time of year, the so-called waking up phase, for them to actually get on that bait, if that makes sense. And I think some waters actually, it could be a total flip and they could fish a little bit slower as a result, depending on how long this goes on for. We've all heard of waters where the fish just get kind of so-called preoccupied on naturals. And I think that, is a potential risk for some waters. I say risk, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think if you're thinking outside the box, and you're a bit, clued up on attraction, then that could actually work well for you, believe it or not. But I guess my answer is it depends. It could go either way. Depends on the water, if that makes sense, and how hungry that water is. It's a big thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think somewhere like I had Rich Wilby on as a guest a few episodes ago. His lakes, I think they're sort of the fish rely heavily on naturals in there, so they don't particularly need anglers' bait. So, I think you're right. It depends completely on the type of water. Obviously, you touched then, Sam, on attraction. You're quite clued up on the liquid side of things. Do you want to talk a bit about that? I know you keep quite a bit of it under your hat. Is there anything you can talk about?
Yeah,
for the attractor side?
Of course I can. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I do keep quite a bit under my hat. That's purely because I don't want to, I don't want to go on to a venue and then obviously people know, oh, it's that guy from the Carp Angler Chronicles and he's doing X, Y, and Z and he's having a good result. Maybe it won't happen like that. Maybe I won't have a good result, but I'm planning on having a good result. So I don't want to kind of throw it all out there, so to speak. But just I guess you're asking what I meant by it can work in your favor. You got to look at it, right? The fish are getting preoccupied on natural food. Well, okay, well, that's summarizing that they aren't taking anglers' bait. Okay, so what kind of bait are you putting in? Can you somewhat replicate the natural food they're eating on? Or can you even go a step further and look at why is it that they're preoccupied on that natural food? There's a reason for that, right? Now, obviously, if you're giving them, like an old school 50-50 soya semo boilie with some flavor, of course they're not going to be too enamored with your bait. But let's say your bait is actually, supposedly good. It's got, just a general good, let's say, fish meal. It's got pre-digestive fish meals in there, LT94, some good components. It's generally a good bait. Why aren't they eating it? Well, generally what you'll find, these are survival animals, remember, it's because they don't need to. They have an abundance of natural food. Maybe it's the signals that natural food is giving out, or maybe it's that they know they don't get caught on it, or maybe it's a bit of mix of both. So how can you replicate that, give them something that they aren't used to getting caught on, and it replicates the natural food signals that their food source is giving out? So I guess the first step in that would be like, let's figure out what it is they're so-called preoccupied on. Okay. And by the way, you can often skip this step by just getting a good soluble bait going. So say you're using a great bait. I don't know what boilies do you use, Dom?
I use Baitworks.
Baitworks, pretty good bait, I think, right? So let's say you're using one of the Baitworks baits, you're putting those in, it's not quite working for you. Maybe if you add a liquid to that, which is going to have, amongst other things, free-form amino acids that are flowing out very readily, literally, that might be all it takes to trigger a bite. Now, be mindful of which liquid you use. I actually like a mix of liquids. What you'll find is if you just use one liquid, such as, you can't get it anymore, but L0 30, or what's a new one? Like if you have a krill hydrolysis, if you just use that on its own, that tends to blow after a period of time. If you mix it, it's much better. But nonetheless, you get a good liquid, add it to the boilies. So obviously you've got that different element of attraction. Oftentimes that's enough. Sometimes that's just not too much. Okay, so take it a step further, get some very small baits. Maybe they're feeding on zebra mussels. Get something very, very small like that. Still stick with the liquid, get those aminos going. If that isn't working, then maybe you need to step it up a further notch. Maybe you actually need to use, you keep going on and on and on, and maybe you get to a place where actually, shit, I need to use exactly what it is they're preoccupied on, whether that's zebra mussels, or whether it's if it's a specific time of the year and the crayfish are shedding their shells, they're very vulnerable. Maybe you need to, rig up a crayfish, some crayfish meat, and get a bite like that. I guess what I'm saying is think outside the box, look at what it is they're feeding on, then look at why they're feeding on it, and try and overcome those obstacles in a logical manner. And generally you can do.
So you just have to take into consideration the time of year and what's naturally happening out in front of you, I suppose.
100%. And you can, and I don't know how in the weeds we want to get here. You can get really involved with different organic acids, organic compounds, and present something that they're not used to seeing. Now they might, register these organic compounds. TMO is something that me and Pete spoke about in our last podcast. They might register that to a degree in the natural food they feed on. They might have it as an element of a pre-made bait if you've put together a very good bait. What about having just that as the main attractor? Something like that is totally different for the carp, and something that it's not necessarily mimicking what they're eating naturally, but it's so far away from what they are seeing normally that generally that they, in my experience at least, they'll often take a punt and try it. I mean, they don't have hands, they have mouths to experiment with things. They suck things in. We've all seen this if we've studied carp in detail. They'll suck things in, move them around their mouth, and spit them out just purely out of interest. Now, if you've got a good functional rig, that's all you need to do. That's all you need to happen. Sorry. So, I guess what I'm saying, absolutely. Look at what's going on out in the water in front of you, act accordingly, but also don't be afraid to go, real kind of left field and just try something completely out of the box. You never know. It just might make your season epic.
Yeah, no, I think it was Mark Bryant actually from Baitworks that included that in one of his videos where he was collecting all the zebra mussels from the margin, crunching them up into his spod mix, and then spodding them out.
Absolutely. And how many people do that? Yeah, probably.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know where he did it, but how many people on that water do that? Probably not many. So yeah, absolutely. And as well as that, you've got the crunch factor, which if sound travels differently underwater. Everything is it's kind of magnified but muffled. It's incredible. But the carp crushing down those shells in their pharyngeal teeth, that's going to bring in more carp, and not so much bringing in more carp. Let's say they move around in pods. It's that sound almost can spur on, in my opinion anyway, I might be wrong, but I think that noise can spur on further feeding, because it's like, okay, well, everyone's feeding here, it's amping that up. It's that whole survival thing where they want to consume the food. It's prevalent, it's obvious to them that there's other carp in the vicinity consuming that food, and it kind of, I think, puts their guard down and makes them feed with a bit more gusto.
Yeah, I think it was Simon Scott I heard say something very similar. It's very loud underwater, and exactly that. It's almost like their dinner bell. You think if one's crunching, they've obviously found something. We're going to investigate.
Absolutely, yeah. Even if you just duck under in the pool, right, and let's say your missus or someone is walking up to you or whatever, look, obviously this won't work in a busy pool because you'll just hear a load of kids screaming. But you can. That's a good test. You'll hear things really in a different way. Yeah, same as being bankside. I think deep bassy voices they can detect. So like I haven't got a light voice, I haven't got a deep voice, but I would talk quietly. I'd kind of whisper if I was on the bank next to someone, because I think they can detect that. But even more than that, I think just the movement of a foot. If you think that bank that is adjoining the water, the movement of that is just transferred so readily available to them. So yeah, I guess that leads us on to careful foot placement on the bank, particularly when you're on a snag tree or something like that. Yeah, it's all
really
worth
important.
notes.
Yeah, and obviously the shadows and things as well. They're used to seeing that tree line, that skyline look the same. If they see something out of place that's not normally there, they're going to be alert, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah, it 100%, yeah. And like we've all been up a tree, and we've perhaps seen them from the bank, and we've been back, and we've seen them doing a certain pattern of movement. We'll go up the tree, we won't make a sound, or at least in our heads we won't make a sound, but just us being up there, like they will be different. They will move out, they'll be on air. I think probably a lot of us have seen that, and it's like, well, why? And again, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Dom. It's like that tree line, that line of vision, like they'll know when it's out or when it's soon changed. They seem to be very, very tuned into that. And I guess that's a evolution point kind of thing, because predators, where do they come from? Otters. They come from up above, don't they? Obviously they swim up behind the carp to grab them, but generally they come from up above. So yeah, the fish are very, very tuned into not only the what we would call as sound, but also the visual aspect of things as well.
Yeah, nice. On that note, are you both? I'll ask you in sort of Sam first, then Pete. Are you both fans of stalking? Would you rather have one out the edge over a sort of carefully laid trap, or would you rather fish at range?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. My thing is I want to find the fish and I want to catch them like that. I'm a peculiar human. Like if I just set the trap, so to speak, pop a load of bait out, and if I just sat on that for 48 hours and then I had one, me personally, I'm not knocking this, and this isn't rational thought process. I wouldn't feel like I've caught that, because what work have I done really? Okay, I've got a decent rig on. Well, look, everyone's got decent rigs these days compared to what it was like, back in the day, right? So there's no real talent there. Baiting up, okay, well, yeah, I guess you've got your baiting pattern. Whatever. Do you know what I'm trying to say? There's not that much skill to it. Whereas like finding
It's not hunting.
finding the fish, and then even a step further than that, picking out that fish that you want. That's the one I want. Okay, there's something magic about that. So yeah, for me, if I could stalk, all of my fish, I'd be a very, very happy boy. Don't get me wrong. I'll bait and wait. Of course I will. I'm not stupid. And look, and in the same respect, I'm not poo-pooing that. You figure out things, you figure out the movement of carp, where they move around the lake, and then you bait up in anticipation. I'm not saying there isn't skill in that. I'm just trying to give you two polar opposites. My preference is to stalk them for sure. Yeah.
Nice. Pete, what about you?
Yeah, very, very similar to Sam, I guess. I absolutely love stalking them. For me, a lot of carp fishing in particular, is I have this thing in my head where I like to catch them on my own terms, and it's pretty similar to what Sam has sort of alluded to already. But yeah, if I can get them feeding in the edge, for me that's a massive bonus. Anyway, I love to create a situation where I get the fish feeding, and if I can watch that and see it all happen, I get a huge buzz from that. Anyway, as many times I can go to a lake and I can just bait little spots, and I can just sort of lie there on the water's edge and watch for ages and ages, watch the fish come in and out, taking baits as they go. In some instances, I could. It's quite sad saying this, but I'd be happy sort of doing that and not drop a rod in. I just love the whole process. So getting the fish to feed, I think there's an art to it, and getting them comfortable to come in and repeatedly take baits. especially in a spot that they probably might not go to feed as well. Somewhere in the edge, they might be sort of like cautious. It might be unnatural to them to feed there. They can be on edge, and to actually create that feeding scenario for me is like a big part of it. It's almost manipulating the fish. It sounds a bit daft, but I take a lot of pleasure from that. There's a lot of times I've been fishing with friends, and they think I'm mad because I'll quite happily go around a lake doing this sort of stuff all day, where I could sort of like nick a bite or maybe two, and I've probably not banked as many fish as I could have if I had done sort of like the bait and wait. But it's for me, it's catching them on my terms, I guess, and that's part of the enjoyment of fishing.
Yeah, especially when you know I think that's why floater fishing is so exhilarating, isn't it? Because you can normally see which one it is, especially if it's one of the better fish you want when that back starts popping out of the water.
Yeah, for sure. I love floater fishing, definitely. Especially
It can be very frustrating as well at times. I can't.
Yeah, do you know what? I am not the best floater angler. My conversion to takes and sort of landing fish, in my head anyway, isn't fantastic. I think everybody has frustrations with it. But yeah, it can be mightily frustrating. If I can get a rig on the bottom and watch them come in and take that, I'm a lot more confident anyway.
Yeah, I think that's the style I'd go down. A sort of sneaky little trap in the margin is definitely my preference. But equally, like Sam was saying, when you have got rods on a spot and you start to see fish showing, or even just out of the blue, you just get that blistering take with sort of no prior warning, no single bleep, no shows. Christchurch was renowned for that as well as a funny place. You'd have loads of fizzing over your spots, and you think, right, game on here, we're going to get a take any minute. The fish will be showing, and it would just go completely dead, nothing for a few hours, no shows, no signs, and you just get a take out of the blue. It's strange how it seemed to go on there.
Are you still fishing Christchurch?
No. So I didn't get a syndicate ticket or anything like that. So my last session was probably 2 weeks before the lockdown, so middle of March, something like that.
How long have you fished it for?
Only I started sort of January last year, I think it was. But it was
okay.
I've probably only done, if I sat down and worked out, maybe 20 nights on there, something like 18 nights. Not very many because I didn't fish from sort of May until October. So yeah, but had a few. But it's a nice lake, but obviously really busy.
Yeah. Have you found? So I mean, I've never done like a real super busy circuit style water. Have you found that your angling had to change to any great degree?
When it was really busy, yes, because obviously watercraft would almost be out the window. So it would be a case of just slotting in wherever you could. But on most of those times, I ended up catching anyway. I think, again, because that back to that pressure sort of topic that we were talking about, I think it just pushed the fish into the quieter area, even though it wasn't sort of, air quotes, a fancied area. I think if you approached it a bit different and were just sort of quiet, small leads, tiny bit of bait, just, being subtle, I seem to catch. Yeah, so yes, I suppose it did sort of change my angling, but it's sort of, I don't know, it's a fun one, isn't it? Like it took the equation of, well, where am I going to go? I can't get a few spots going and walk around. It was a case of just slotting into wherever. But those swims that do get left alone on there, they don't do as many bites, but the bites that they do seem to be the better fish.
Yeah, and as far as I'm aware, I mean, I'm not tuned into the place at all, but from what I've heard, a lot of people are just going small bait, like as in not much bait out there and small baits. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. But
So,
again, I was just using a 10 mil like sent from hell, like they call it, like a bait topper. It was just one of those with a bit of plastic corn on top, and just do that very small. But yeah, just and small bits. But obviously, I think it's like anything; it goes in cycles. The fish get battered on a certain method or a certain approach, and then it just switches off.
See,
and then it'd go back to a load of boil. So just boilie fishing would do well on there. So it's cyclical, isn't it? Everything in life's cyclical, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, like that, just hearing that, I would just go in there with like 24 millers, loads of them. I would just totally go the opposite way and I'd be really confident.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, I might, fall on my backside and it might not work, but I just think these venues that get so caught up and it's like, no, you've got to have small baits, got to be tight baiting approach as well. I don't know. I think people can be a kind of victim of the so-called going method. When you go
definitely.
like polar opposites, often it can really work well.
Yeah, I spoke a couple of times to Ian Paul on some previous episodes, and he said the same about. Obviously, he fished it way back when, and obviously had the fish named after him. But he said they were using tiny short hook lengths to the point where, like, on a solid bag, like when they got the fish in, the lead was almost in his mouth as well, sort of inch and a half, 2 inch hook length. But obviously, when I was fishing it, I was using a massive long boom. I think I measured one of them. On a little tiny pop-up, and it was like the boom was about 14 inches long, just with a big heavy lead. So yeah, completely that. They just get battered on a method, and then you just have to adapt, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. I didn't even know he fished it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm so I don't follow that side of things. Did he have petals? Was it back then?
Yeah. I think that might have even been his PB. He said.
Nice.
Yeah, he had fish named after him. And I say there's an episode where he talks about it. But yeah, obviously, and him being a brilliant floater angler as well. I think him and John Finch, Bankside Tackle, they both caught a hell of a lot out of there back in the day.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's nice. Yeah. So what I will do as well, while we're in lockdown, I've been asking people, any Netflix or Amazon Prime recommendations?
I got a few Pornhub recommendations. I don't know if.
Yeah, I think everyone's exhausted that.
Do you know what? I was on this going off on a tangent. You can cut this out if you want, Dom. But I went on a mastermind call. I'm part of a business mastermind type thing. So it's basically a pretentious kind of thing. But and we were saying we didn't know if there was like lockdown porn yet, but there is, and it's rife. Like corona porn with the masks, and like Chinese women and stuff. Yeah, it's like wow. Jumped on that train quick. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like anything, any sort of cheesy social media posts, they're just getting on it, aren't they? Corona. So yeah, we get it.
Oh
yeah, come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anything, Pete? Have you got any Netflix recommendations?
So I'm currently catching up with The Walking Dead. So I'm on season 9, but I think that one's quite exhaustive with everyone. A good one, which I think it airs on Sky, but it's definitely sort of on Netflix and things, is Strike Back. I don't know if you've seen that. It's like a special ops sort of army type military TV program.
Okay. I like stuff like
that.
that.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. It's been going for a number of seasons now, so I think you've got like 6, 7 seasons. But they released them. There's quite a gap between seasons. So I think in the original cast, I don't know. It was probably 10 years ago maybe. But yeah, it's a good one anyway. I'd recommend that for anyone.
Okay. Do you watch any of the SAS stuff, the Who Dares Wins, the Middleton? Have you seen any of that?
Do you know what? I haven't, no.
That's quite funny.
Another one I've watched as well, which I think's been done to death, but I've only caught up with it late, is Suits. I don't know if you've watched Suits.
Oh, the missus enjoys that.
Yeah, it's quite a girly one. But yeah, no, I love that. That was a good.
Either of you seen Ozark?
Oh, I saw that advertised. It came up as suggested for me. Well, I didn't. Is it good?
Yeah, really good. Really well written. Yeah, I've said this on a few podcasts, so I'll keep it sweet. But yeah, watch it. That's a definite from me. I'm trying to think of what other series I've seen.
I've started watching. I watched Stranger Things not so long ago, which I actually thought was very good, really, really good. But I'm partway through with my girlfriend. We have to have together time. So we watch at the night time. American Horror. Is it American Horror Story? Something like that. I think it's been going for a
All right,
while.
okay.
That's good. The first one is very good. We're on season number 3 right now.
Right.
The first season, very good. I think it's American Horror Story, American Horror Show, something like that.
Is that on Netflix?
Yeah, it's Netflix. The icon, the picture is a woman screaming with a key through her mouth. If anyone's looking for it,
Okay.
but that's very good. The first season, amazing, very very good. 2 since that, not as good in my opinion. But yes.
Okay, yeah, that's the trouble, isn't it? With the series, they tend to tail off, don't they?
It's been going since 2011, so it's
Okay.
it's quite old. I'm probably late on it,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, well, that Ozark, I think season 3's just come out, and season 2 was really good. There was no sign of it slowing up. I think season 3 will also be good, but
Yeah.
it's getting the time to do it, isn't it? Especially if you're a business owner, and obviously Pete, you've got three kids.
Mhm.
It's finding the time to do it, and when you do sit down, it's almost a commitment to get into something, isn't it? As well.
I find that's the worst part, because then you start binge watching, and then it's sort of late at
Yeah.
night, and then you're digging yourself a hole with this like cycle of tiredness, but you're desperate to watch it. It's terrible.
I'm weird. I might get a season or two into something and just stop. I don't know what happens. Life gets in. I've realised I can never really switch off, which I know isn't a good trait. But I don't know. Do you find that, Sam, with business and stuff? Or I suppose if you're more sort of in the health and almost well-being space, are you quite aware of that?
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm very aware of it, and I'm still awful. Like, actually, to be honest, I had a little bit of a ding dong with my partner, my girlfriend earlier. I can't, like, I just can't leave it. Like, I'm always on my phone. I'm glued to my phone, which is what annoys her. I'm just always on. Like, it's something that, my focus wants to go towards business all the time. And it's not good. It's unhealthy. I can schedule in all these downtimes as much as I want. For me, at this point in my life, I'm very kind of type A driven. There's a large part of me that's just like, it's pointless me watching this. I could be doing something productive right now. Let's just do.
Yeah.
It's just awful, which is kind of how I am with my fishing these days as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not good. We need our downtime. It's important. It's a lesson I'm constantly teaching myself, to be honest.
Yeah, but also on that note, I mean, from a business point of view, if it's something you love doing, and I know it's a bit cliche and a bit cheesy, I like doing the business stuff. I like doing this podcast stuff. I'll happily sit on my phone like for an hour after and just plug the Spodcast a bit, make connections with people on Instagram. I enjoy doing that, and then like, I'll sit and I'll flick through, let's say, Amazon Prime for probably 20 minutes, and I think I don't really want to watch anything. I just end up going to bed.
Yeah.
So I think people sort of like, so your girl. So for example, does your girlfriend run her own business, or is she employed?
She's employed by me. She
Right, okay.
she basically does about an hour of work a day and gets paid
Yeah.
a lot of money for it. Yeah, and she actually quit today, as it happens.
Oh right.
She does.
Well, after that argument.
Yeah. No, she
Oh, nice.
no, yeah. Genuinely, she does more than an hour a day. That's not fair. She does a few hours a day.
Past tense.
Yeah, it is. No, yeah, she doesn't anymore. She's a free bird. She gets everything.
Brilliant. One question I want to ask before I forget, like a rotary letter style.
Yeah.
I can ask to both of you. So it was Matt Brzezinski that asked it, and it's, if you could catch any fish from like either past or present, so dead or alive, which one would it be? So Sam, if you go first.
That's honestly, it's such a hard question because I mean, I kind of alluded to this earlier on. I really feel this need to kind of earn my fish. I guess I'd look at it another way. Sorry to whoever asked this. I would say, what water would I have loved to have fished? I would love to have fished Redmire. Or actually, I'd probably rather fish Beachmere. Beachmire, depending on how you pronounce it. I would love to have fished that place. I really would. I probably will fish it very soon, actually, as it happens. But I'd love to have fished it back in the heyday. But to answer the question, I mean, I'm going to have to go with Raisbury and Mary. I think if I could have been on there back in the heyday, I think I'd have chosen Raisbury. And if you're fishing Raisbury, what do you want to catch? You want to catch Mary, don't you? Come on, let's be honest. So yeah, I would have chosen Mary at Raisbury.
Brilliant, proper man's water as well.
Yeah, of course it was. Not like it is now, unfortunately. But yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, Pete, what's your answer to that question?
So I've chopped and changed. We discreetly mentioned this earlier before the podcast. So mine, I'm going for this one. And I think it's just more about the experience. And I think it was something like the whole journey I'd love to do. Living where I live, it's not possible where I live. And this is I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was Nick Hellier's capture of the Thames 50. I think it was this.
Yeah. Did.
Now that to me, I just think that you're fishing completely for the unknown. For sure, stretches of river. I think there's a few known fish in different stretches and things. But I just think the whole sort of the boat life, the experience of going out in the boat and sleeping on the boat, and I'd love the opportunity to do it one day. And a fish like that is just incredible. A river 50. I don't know if it's come out of a lake at some point when there's been flooding or anything. I don't know anything about the fish. But yeah, a 50-pound river carp caught in the manner that he did, I think is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, that's something I would certainly aspire to try and do one day.
Yeah, funny you should say that actually, Pete, because that fish was mentioned as an answer to a previous question on the Rotary letter. So a slightly different question. That question was, if you could be behind the lens for one famous capture, what fish would it be and where? And I think it was John Lamb from Urban Carp Collective that answered he'd want to be behind the camera of that capture of that fish. So that's really interesting.
So yeah, there we go. Sorry, I haven't listened to that one.
That's right.
But, I feel a bit naughty now.
Disgusting.
No, it's good. Also, then, it'll have to be a question between the two of you. Have you got a question I can ask to the next guest?
Yeah. Have you got anything, Sam? Go on.
I've got something that's popped to mind. I don't know how good it is. I guess it stems on from what we were talking about earlier. Would you rather, figure out where? Let's presume you're on a waterway and there's a target carp, right? Sorry, Dom, this is a long question. It's not an easy one.
I'm going to try and that's right. I'll try and write it down as a talk.
Yeah, you're going to hate this. Let's say you're on a water and you got your target carp in mind, right? There's this one fish you want to catch it. Okay, do you piece together its movements? Kind of figure out where it's going to move to, and do you bait and wait? Or do you stalk it out somehow? Now, obviously, the answer of this will largely depend on the kind of water that the answer E has got in mind. But do you bait and wait your target fish, or do you stalk it out? And stalking doesn't need to be in the margins. It can be you've seen the fish, you put you're anticipating its movement path, you're putting a bait there. That's my question. Bait and wait, or stalk it out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could be. So you its patrol route, or you've seen it coming in across a bar, or you've seen it showing in a regular area. So you start to apply some bait. Oh, I like that one.
I've tried to go different.
Nice. I like that. Any other questions or points from you guys?
Not Not from me. I mean, Dom, I could ask you tons of questions. I'd like to know more about you. I'm sure your listeners would as well. But
Tell you what, should we do that as a part 2 then?
let's do it as a part 2. I think that's done it. Yeah.
We're on an hour and 5 minutes now. Okay, we'll wrap up there. So Sam and Pete, thank you very much for coming on, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's the first time we've talked over each other. We always fight on our podcast as we talk over one another. But yeah, no, thank you very much, Dom. Yeah, it's been great. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, Dom. Thanks, everyone. Love you all.